All right. Welcome to the Tell It Like It Is podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I have an amazing guest. Beth, how are you?
I'm well. Lexi, how are you?
All right. I really appreciate you coming on with me today, and I'm glad to have you as a guest.
I'm happy to be here. It's kind of nice opportunity to sit and talk to you. You're always jogging past me in the morning, and I'm waving at you, and now we can actually have a conversation. So that's nice.
That's exactly what I was thinking. So, I basically the podcast, it's new for me, and it's not about being famous or getting likes or doing any of that kind of thing. It's really an opportunity to build community, have conversations, and really do something meaningful, something that we can look back and say that was the beginning of something going forward. So I know you're very active in the community. I know um, you're interested in making things better. So I know this would be a great conversation to have, connect some ideas, and talk about next steps and growth, action, those kinds of things.
Great, great. I just have to say that, I'm talking to you individually as myself, as Beth, and not as a member of the Board of Education. I'm not representing the board just because of my role. I always have to say that when I'm talking to people so that it's clear I'm in my personal capacity. So I'm really happy to have this since you're recording it. I need to say that clearly. But
Exactly. No, I do appreciate that, and I do respect that as well. Um, how long have you been in Princeton?
oh, 21 years. 20 years? We came 2 days before 9/11. So we
Oh,
were here on
wow.
the 9th of September 2001. We moved from Brooklyn, and my job started on the 10th, and we came with a U-Haul and left all our furniture in Brooklyn because we were going to show our house and sell our apartment. And we came to town, and 2 days later it was 9/11. So
So
never forget it when we came.
you left at the city right at the beginning of something.
Yeah, yeah. And I was pregnant with my first child, and I have to say, I was hesitant to move to Princeton because it was so far away and so rural, and kind of at that time in my life, I was enjoying New York so much. But 9/11 changed everything, and then having a child, it's like I wouldn't have really. I was very happy to be here. I felt like I was a little safer, and then, but of course, then the anthrax thing happened too immediately, but right outside our house in our mailbox. But anyway, I moved here at that time. It was a bit of a unsettled time.
Did that happen in Princeton?
Yeah, there was a drop in a mailbox on the corner of where was it, on Nassau and one of the tree streets. One of the packages had been deposited, so we
Was
lived
that
about a block away.
was that ever founded? Was Did they ever conclude anything from that
I don't know
investigation?
that they really did. I think they kind of pinned it on one guy from the Center for Disease Control or some place, and then he actually took his own life. So I don't know if that ever was resolved.
Okay,
It
I'll
was a
look
very
into that.
frightening time, and we were all taking in our mail with rubber gloves, and I was pregnant, so I didn't want to touch it. And you know,
Yeah,
I'm a lawyer, so I was advising my company how to handle all the mail and all the packages, and it was quite frightening.
that's very close to home, I would say.
Yeah,
'Cause I mean, I remember anthrax. I know it was in the city. I know it was around, but I never felt like it was on my corner.
yeah, no, it was really close here in Princeton. So, and then they had to close down the I think it was a Hamilton post office that was closed for over a year because it was put into the bin here in Princeton, and it went through their machines, and so they had to really do a deep cleaning, and it was a big deal.
I'm definitely gonna do some research on that.
So
Um,
when did you guys move here? You moved here about what, 10 years ago?
Not even, not even. This is still year six, right? So 2016 was when we came. So we just made 5 years.
Really? I feel like it was so long ago when you and I taught the chess class. Do you remember
Yeah,
at Riverside?
absolutely. That was one of the first things that I was very gung ho about chess and getting involved. And yeah, that I jumped right in with that.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I think that was the fall of 2016 we started
Okay.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
time flies.
Uh-huh.
and it also
Uh-huh.
feels like long ago at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of so there's a lot of big ideas. Um, you know, we live in America. This is Princeton, and I think we're all doing our little bit to make things better and leave the world that we want to see for our children. Is there anything specific that what do you say to the kids about the way they should live their lives?
You mean my own kids about how they think about, hmm. Well, I really focus a lot on the idea of personal responsibility and that all of us have, we're so blessed. I'm first generation. My father immigrated and came from Germany when he was 5, and my family's German. And um, it was kind of drilled into my head how lucky I was to be alive and, in this time and born in this country and to be in a democracy. And my parents were very, very clear that it was mine to inherit and mine to continue, right? And that it was our job and our duty as citizens to kind of get in there and run it. It belongs to everybody, right? It's us, not the government and us. It's we're all one thing. So I talk to my kids a lot about the fact that if you appreciate something and you want to live in a community and you value democracy and you value having good schools and you value having religious institutions and you value having a library and a town where people can get together, that you have to be part of it. And if you see something you don't like about it, it's up to you to fix it. And you never say, well, these guys, this government didn't do this or the council didn't do this or it belongs to everyone. So I'm all about having that responsibility of getting involved and making things better. And so I really talk to my kids about that a lot. And so running for the school board for me initially, I ran after the Trump's election because I was so devastated about what was happening at the national level, and that I felt that I had to take that energy and put it into something and locally. And so that's what I did. I decided I'm going to try to help out with the schools. Public education is really important to me, and I also think fundamental to our democracy. So I've been putting all of my energy into something local, and for me, it's kind of, I think, kept me sane and kept me going during these last 4 years when things have been very, very difficult and stressful to witness at the national level. So I just talk about that with my kids all the time. That you see something, you want to live someplace, you want to enjoy this democracy we have. It's a verb. Democracy is a verb, and if we don't all own it and take part in it and do our part where we can and when we can, because we can't always, like when I was younger, I worked in the city for a long time. I'm a lawyer. I worked really hard and I just took care of my own career and I didn't have time to volunteer. And now I'm fortunate that I can devote my time to it. So it's not that we all have to do it all the time, but I just feel like for my kids, I always say to them when they were little, I'm like, hey, climate change is really a problem and I'm very sorry, and I'm sorry that my generation's leaving this to you, but you guys have to figure this out. So you start thinking and start planning for how you're going to help, because if we don't all help, we're in trouble. So that's a long answer to that, but it's a
That's
big
perfect.
theme.
That's exactly perfect. Yeah, so basically, what I feel is like going forward, the messages that we're leaving for our kids, that's really what's important.
Mhm.
And sometimes I see certain people behaving in a way, and I wonder, are they aware that the actions that they're doing send a message, and do they really want to send that message forward to their children?
Mm. Yeah, they watch us, right? I mean, I actually was thinking of that last night. I had a board meeting, and people come and speak to us about certain things, and I really believe that our children are watching all the time, or we should behave as if they're watching, and we should be living the values that we want to pass on to them. And I think that in our society these days, a lot of people aren't always thinking about that. They're thinking more about how they feel in the moment and what they want and what they need. And long term, we all have to get along with each other and figure out how to get things together and to, work with the institutions we have and cooperate and be civil and be kind and have empathy. I really think that's what it's all about. And yeah, we have to model it for our kids. It's really important. They have to see us, you know, do it, or it doesn't mean anything. They'll just do what they want, right? What do you tell your kids?
I stress the importance of starting the life that you want now. It's not something, people say, what do you want to do when you grow up? I don't stress that with them. I want them to begin now.
Hmm.
We live in an age, and I always say this to them, where a computer and a phone, this is more powerful than what they used in the 60s to get to the moon.
That's right.
So use the technology that you like to play on, use that to start your life. Your life already started. It's not a what do you want to do, when you're 25. It's start right now.
Mm.
That's the most message that I keep coming back to. And every day they're like, oh, here he comes. Because kids spend a lot of time trying to use technology, but they're not being productive with it. That's the
Mm.
main thing that I tell them, and I try to model positive role models. So I think that'll come. And I always talk about conscious thought, being responsible, treating others the way you want to be treated, and not just following the rhetoric of what other people are doing and what other people are saying. Really stop and think about your specific actions. And what if that was you on the other side of what you just did? Well, he did it first. Well, now you begin this cycle of retribution and revenge. And like, is that conducive? Because now something that happened 2 weeks ago, you're bringing it into this week, and it becomes you. And that energy of what someone did to you, if you hold that within, then now it becomes you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It
let that
controls
go.
you. It gives them power. I always tell my kids about that because I think about that in my own life because, some of the work I'm doing now is kind of difficult and I work with people who are very strong-willed and have opinions, and sometimes you don't always get along, and it's like but you can't live your life letting other people decide how you feel every day. You have to just let them be them and you be you, and don't let other people kind of have power over you by making you upset or angry. Or it's hard, but you remind me of my mother. My mother said to me, I remember when I was younger, she always would say, we didn't have a lot of money, and somehow I grew up in a little town, and somehow the clothing was important, like, and you'd see what people were wearing, and it kind of
Still
was a
today.
symbol. And so I'd say, I really, really want a pair of jeans from the Gap, and she just, I remember she always would lecture me about, just because everyone else is doing that doesn't mean you have to do it too. They were jumping off a cliff. Would you do the same? It's very important you don't do what everyone else is doing. But I always didn't really like to hear that because it usually meant she was saying no.
Right.
About, can I look like my peers, or can I have some Docksider shoes like everyone else does, or something like that.
We all want to fit in, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to use the platform for is to raise awareness. A lot of people are too busy to attend these community meetings. They sincerely want to know, they sincerely want to be involved, and they sincerely want to support the people doing the good fight, but they're too busy. And unless you walk up to them and tell them, there it goes right over their head. So one of the things I want to do is spotlight the work and the causes that needs attention, needs that extra push, whether it's time or money or whatever, just a vote, whatever it needs. A lot of people are unaware, like
Mm.
what's on the ballot coming up, what issues are being discussed. So I wanted to begin our conversation so you feel comfortable sharing things that you're able to share, so that we can get the word out and actually, move things forward in the direction that we want and not have things be so difficult. Sometimes the most powerful voices don't represent the many.
Oh, that's very much correct. Yes, because many people are so busy in their everyday life, just, putting food on the table, getting their job done, and they don't have time to focus on the larger issues that are going. That's why I say I don't judge people who don't all have time to pitch in. I mean, many people these days are just trying to make ends meet, right? And there's a lot of crisis right now. That's even more people are in difficult situations. So yeah, and the trick is when you're in the role in a public office like with the Board of Education, the trick is how do you communicate in ways that people can take small bites when they have a moment to really take it in and feel that they kind of know what's going on, or they can find out what's going on if they have the bandwidth for it. And that's a really hard, that's the hardest, one of the hardest things we do is trying to communicate to people. And it was the same thing with the PTO. Do you remember? I mean, you have your volunteers in your school who are all just trying to get stuff done for the kids. And you've got other families who are just really struggling to get by. And how do you convey information to them? And it's always a challenge to make sure people are aware. And they don't need to know everything sometimes, right? If we trust each other, it's okay. I'm elected to do something for people, and I hope that they trust me to know that I have time to spend on it, so I'm doing that and making decisions. But it's also important that then people know what the main issues of the day are, because there are people who are highly motivated and have a lot of time on their hands, and then they do speak loudly, and they may not represent the 32,000 people in Princeton, right? We have and we always have to think about the people whose voices we're not hearing and what they might want us to do. Um, so I don't know. It's a tricky, but I appreciate that you're trying to do a bit of that for people. That's a great thing to work on.
I've also said I've been in places before where I know people are busy at that time, you know, and I said, like, why don't we record it and make it available, so like people who are a part of the community who belong in that meeting, who don't have that specific time, so they can access it later.
Yeah, what we do is we record our meetings, and I don't know that anyone wants to sit through our meetings. They're quite long. But
Right.
we also have a summary that we do the next day. In fact, we're doing it again today. We send out a very short summary that's not officially minutes, but it tells exactly what we did. And so that's always on the website of the school district, and it also goes out to parents, I think. And that takes 30 seconds to read over, and you can skim it and see if there's something interesting that you care about. So we try to do that. We condense it down and write it in plain English and say, here's what we talked about last night. So we do try to do that.
What's going to be on the one today?
Well, what did we do last night? It just talks about we made a statement in support of the Asian American community, condemning the violence. We showed gratitude to our healthcare team, our nurses, and our school doctor and the public health people, because they've been so helpful in trying to guide us as we return back to school. We gave an update on, briefly on how we're returning to school and all the different levels. There was a wonderful presentation on the middle school's Jedi program that they're doing with I think it's the sixth graders, where they pick people of color that have had achieved different things in science, and they do a presentation, and we got to watch. That's actually fun to watch. It's on the video if you want to go to the meeting last night.
All right.
And then what else did we do? We did a lot of ordinary business last night, approving different contracts, and it wasn't. Nah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was really a big issue last night. We had a lot of comment again from the public. There's a certain group in town that's very concerned that we don't. They're sending petitions around saying somehow that we don't want to open school full time.
I saw that.
Yeah, and it's like I made a statement, trying to explain that that's absolutely what we're trying to do, but that there are all these regulations and laws and guidelines that we need, and in fact, well, this is important. We've put on the website now a list of questions that we really need to have answers in order for all the public schools in the state to be able to plan effectively. Because right now we're planning for next year, and we're forced to do multiple scenarios, and this group is saying to us, we want to guarantee that we'll be back full time. Well, if we could do that, we would love to do that, but that would be disingenuous. You can't guarantee anything in this environment. We're in a pandemic. But and it's interesting that the governor last week said, oh, no remote option. Nobody's going to get a remote option next year. And you're like, how can that be, right? And he already flipped. He flipped yesterday and said, oh, well, no, there is going to be remote option. So, like schools have to have, it's an incredible planning exercise for 570 some staff people and 3,700 kids over 5, 6 buildings, and with busing and sports and extracurriculars, like it's a huge logistical thing to figure out how to get all the kids in the buildings that were already too small to start with. Like our buildings, as you know, we've been talking about, are either almost at capacity or over capacity, or just they're very full.
Right.
It's very hard to find room for them if you're going to have to distance at all. And so all this stuff is really complicated. And the governor just doesn't give us guidance. And he says it's home rule. You can figure it out yourself. And there's over 600 school districts in the state of New Jersey. So you think about all the children in the state that aren't getting a proper education this year because, we are blessed in Princeton. And we have one of the best interim superintendents in the state. The guy ran the whole superintendents association. He has 35 years of experience. He's brilliant. And he has carried us through, and he's gotten us to reopen school, and we keep opening and opening more. But there's many districts who don't have the resources and don't have, we've got people in town who will give us grants. They'll pay for internet, they'll pay for food, they'll pay for connectivity. They pay for, if we ask and say we have a need, people in this town are so generous. But think of all the children around the state who don't have that advantage. And the governor just says, it's up to the local schools whether you open or not. I'm not going to tell anybody what's required. I'm going to not tell you whether you can have a graduation or you can't. And then if last June, he changed his mind at the last minute, whether you can be outside or not. It's impossible. It's very difficult to plan and to really meet the children, the kids' needs and provide, certainty for the parents and the families to plan. It's very difficult. So I don't know where I started with that, but that was a theme yesterday, and I tried to speak to it. And this particular group of people, I don't really think heard it, but I'll just keep trying to speak to it. And it's on the website now. So if anyone's interested in helping, you can look on the website of the schools, and you can see where you can write letters to the state and your local representatives at the state level and say, please, please, please give the the schools guidance so they can plan. And not to say we all won't have alternative plans if the virus comes back or if we have to do remote, but there's things like, what about standardized testing? What about lunch? What about buses? And what's the distancing on the buses? How do you transport the kids? There's just questions about everything that we do that's kind of regulated by them. And
Well,
we just need to know.
they're telling you it's up to you, but they're also giving you restrictions that you have to follow.
Yes, yes. Even using the tents, like, can you teach outside? Well, not really. You can use tents. They have to have no sides. They can't have any heating. They can't have any, separate thing, and they can't be considered legally a classroom. So they're allowed to use them for, maybe they can eat their lunch, maybe they can have a little social time, but there's local fire codes that we are
Right.
bound by, and then there's the state regulations, and everything we do, we run by the Board of Health. They've been very helpful, but it's just incredible. It's a public, government institution. We represent a state bureaucracy, and nothing is as simple as one thinks it should be. So yeah, and all the governor's guidelines so far in the pandemic to schools have been executive orders, which aren't law. So they have to be reissued and extended, and then you never know what he's going to say next year on the same topics. So it's really it's complicated, and I'm grateful. I think all of us are really grateful, and I'm speaking here as an individual again, but we're all really grateful for our administrators because they've been, and our teachers. Everybody's been working really hard, doing so many things, and I know parents they're tired of saying, well, it's different this week, again next week's different. And it's like, wow, there's different.
It's been a lot of logistical nightmares.
Yeah, for everyone, right?
As a parent, I think I'm very happy that they do have the part-time that they do have, and I think it's able to have some kind of normalcy, to be able to go to school. If it was all remote, it would be very dreary, very sad.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm very grateful for what I have here, and I have no complaints about it at all. You mentioned the support for the Asian community,
Mhm.
and I when this thing happened, I was very much in shock, and this is 2021, and I remember someone made a statement about when we were in pandemic, we were locked down, we had less of these mass shootings. And now that things are like reopening, like they're starting to pop up again. Um, where do you think this comes from?
Oh God. I don't know where it comes from. I think we have a lot of people who are, I think there's been a lot, it's hard to say. I mean, our society, it seems to be getting worse and worse, right? You have a lot of people who have firearms. You have a lot of people who are feeling unhappy, disconnected, maybe mentally not well, right? And it's a bad combination. And we also have all this, I mean, it seems like there's always different reasons for it. I mean, but it's just, I don't know. What do you think?
Um, I think most people, I think most of us, you know, there are, America has guns, but there's a lot of other places that has guns, right? So access to guns is not what's causing it. Um, One of the things that America has a lot of is um, hate speech. And
Mhm.
this hate speech kind of falls into free speech. So I think that's a part of the problem. You know, you're able to say things like, you know, this group caused the pandemic, or, you know, this group's taking all the jobs, or these people need to go back home. Like, that's hate speech. And America is a place that is a land of many. So this is not you know, this is not like a country that started off with one with one race from the beginning, and then people started coming in. We started off as an immigrant country. So for immigrants to have an issue with other immigrants and to say immigrants are this is not a new phenomenon, right?
Mm.
um, but most people would say that, you know, Trump contributed a lot to that rhetoric. And there is a mental health problem in America, I would say. But it's not just mental health because it's in the air or in the water. It's
No.
we're,
Mm.
we're not taking care of people.
Mhm.
So, you know, schools have a problem, and people are growing up with hate speech all around them, and, you know, they get radicalized, and we really don't have a way to stop them. And, you know, we don't have a clear stance. A politician can kind of say certain things, and it's it's deemed as okay, or not okay, it's allowed. So if
Yeah.
you're able to say anti negative things about a group that we all agree is not true, and you consistently say them, you know, people are going to form their own ideas from that in their mind, you know. And America has a history of violence against groups. So the fact that people continue to say things with our history, and these things continuing to happen, it's like a formula, and we keep feeding that fire, I think, at this point.
Yeah. I agree. I would say it is like feeding, it's like feeding an evil. And I remember distinctly the first week or so when Trump was in office. And I remember where I was sitting in my dining room at the table, and I realized who Stephen Miller was.
Mm,
And I remember the feeling in my stomach and how that you have someone in the White House who was a white supremacist.
mm,
And, there had been all that rhetoric in the campaign and then blah, blah, blah. And then he won. And you're like, oh boy, that's bad. Right. And then you realize that he literally has staffed his senior staff with someone who represents this this hatred. And from that day forward, I believe that our culture, not that we have had a history and it's there, it's in this country, it's in many countries around the world. It's like this latent, I studied anti-Semitism and National Socialism stuff when I was younger in college, and in European anti-Semitism, and these things exist under the surface, and they're there. But when you feed them, and what's happened in the last 4 years in this country is we've fed them and we've given them attention and we've given them oxygen and we've given them lot of oxygen and airtime, and they've moved from the fringe into our normal. Like, I remember initially thinking, if my children were little, and with the first year of Trump, there was always some new thing every day where I thought, oh my gosh, my children are hearing this and seeing this as in the White House, and their national politics were having conversations about things that I was just shocked, and just like, it just made me feel tarnished, that the United States would even be having this in prime time. And I feel like we had 4 years of that kind of carnival show of horrors, where this speech was normalized. And now it just took us down so many levels so quickly, that you know it empowered some horrible things. And I think that, hopefully under the current administration, where you don't really hear much at all, it's just gone silent, and it's more positive things. Hopefully we can, the fundamental goodness that I believe is in this country, and like you say, the people who don't have time to get involved in politics, who are living their lives but are decent people and have strong beliefs in things that are good, and respect each other and live in a multicultural society. Hopefully that will build up again, so that becomes more of the normal, more dominates our discourse, and some of this extremism can just kind of go and shrivel up in the corner again. And I do think we've learned a lot. I mean, I feel like, my own journey the last couple of years, I've done a lot of reading, like a lot of white people. I've done a lot of reading, and I've done a lot of, I did this thing called A Long Conversation, which this is a wonderful program that I think some people at Princeton did, and
Mhm.
I learned of through Jess Deutsch through Princeton. And it was all about talking about race and talking about black and white. And it's not a bad word. And it's not to be, you can have conversations, and it's, that's all. I think we got better at that in some levels, and the whole Black Lives Matter thing has really opened us up to some really important work that we all have to do, because it's been there. Like I say, it's under the surface. And, under the Obama administration, this idea that we're past, a post-racial, that whole idea is just like, you can't just get there without really looking under the hood and saying, what are we built on, right? What is our history, So I feel like it does need to get exercised. It's like a cancer. You got to get in there and deal with it and clean it out. Um,
I agree with that very, very specifically. I find that when bad things happen, we get into a space of, all right, we're better than this, let's move forward. But I find that when things are going well, things are more quiet, and
mm,
then the negative aspects of our culture get highlighted in a way the positive doesn't.
mm.
So on an average day, things are quiet. Something good happens, you'll hear four things about it. Something bad happens, you'll hear 40 things about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
So 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 it could be one senator who says one thing about women, and you'll hear that everywhere. And that the little bit of hate is creating a big fire. But
Yeah, I agree.
the larger love that lives within America, it's not being fanned at the same proportion. So, so Trump did like a negative 1,000. Obama did, you know, Obama wasn't an average president.
No.
I think it's very clear, like that. Let's say the average president, he does 100 positive points on the positive scale, right? And then we have those presidents who we think didn't do the best for the American people and moving forward, and they do the moving us back 100 steps. Like Trump was like 10,000 steps in the eyes of most people, and Obama was more than the average president. So my point is, when negative things happen, they get blown up really big, and the positives don't get blown up as big. So over time, the surface is all clear. America is the land of diversity and opportunity, and equal rights and meritocracy, and we all want to believe that, and we all know it's true, but we all also know that underneath there's these things happening consistently.
Hmm.
And what happened in Georgia, that now paints a bigger brush, and that's going to be over us. Um, there's so many things that's consistently happening, whether it's one a year or one every other year or one every 4 years. That nightclub, that gay nightclub in Orlando, like that really, really resonated with me a lot. And we know that hate crimes are happening every week, every month, all over the country. But some of them, so my point is when the hate crime happens, you hear it everywhere. You see the guy on trial, blah, 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 blah. But you don't hear about the healing. You don't hear that this is not America. We just kind of shuffle that. We talk about the negative, and then so this perpetuation, like you said, we're getting worse and worse, and we kind of see why, and we see it, and we're like, uh, so we really have to not just take a stance, but have an action plan.
Mm.
And right before right before the pandemic, I really wanted to start getting involved in Not in My Town,
Hmm.
and I really feel very strongly like Not in My America.
You should. It's a great group of people, and they have some really good conversations, and they have great work. And if you get on their mailing list, almost every day there's something. Linda Oppenheim posts something that's a positive, that's a opportunity to learn, that's a new perspective, about all different cultural perspectives, and they're doing really, really good work. I can't speak, highly. It's just a wonderful group of people. Um, and I think that's the kind of thing we need to do, is where we kind of have to come together in our community in different groups, and talk and share and learn, and put our energy not into watching the 24-hour news cycle, which is tilted towards the negative. It's like that's how they make money, right? It's a click thing. They want clicks, they want eyeballs, and you can't give them your eyeballs. You can't do it. You've got to just find other places to put your gaze that are positive and that will build something, as opposed to contributing to just taking us all down this little spiral where we're, you know, just making it worse. So I always tell my kids, I even with the Trump stuff, I was like, I don't want to hear about it. I don't need to consume that. What do I, every day I have a certain budget of what I can consume, and what energy I have to take in. And I try to figure out how can I find the most constructive things to fill my, garbage in, garbage out, what get me some good stuff. So, I think that you have to find people who are doing good things and spend time with them and be in dialogue and do work with them. To me, that's the answer.
I I realize that we spend a lot of time indoors, not just in Princeton, but generally. People, go to work, come home, and they want to be indoors. And I think a recipe to have more community, more positivity is to turn off screen technology and have more FaceTime.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I don't go on Facebook. I'm on there because my family, I have, younger nieces, and they post a lot of stuff. And so I look once in a while, but I don't think I've been on there in about 2, 3 weeks, because when I go in there, I get sucked in a way that when I look up and break the spell, it's a half hour later, it's 45 minutes later. And I think, what have I learned, or what have I done? Or I feel like I lost something. So I don't do it. I feel like it takes some of that, attention that is so precious, and it takes it, and I don't get anything for it. And it diminishes me. Um,
That's the project that I really feel passionate about, is getting more FaceTime. I live on Harrison Street, and I know no one here on the street. Like people are just inside. And I mean, I know it's a pandemic now, but we don't have that culture of being outside, talking to strangers, talking on a walk and those kinds of things. And I think that's a part of the downward spiral. Um, what scares me is that we all kind of feel that downward spiral, and you're obviously doing the work. And most of us are, like you said, busy taking care of our family, putting food on the table, but somehow this negative spin is getting stronger. And
Yeah, I just worry because when you read about, trying to think who wrote the Unraveling of America, was it George Packer or something? You
mm,
know, we were a society of people who belong to different things, right? And I grew up, my parents at 7 o'clock every night would either be at church or at the planning commission or at the theater thing, public theater, local theater, or the AFS, international exchange program or whatever. We belonged to everything, and they always had meetings, and they were very busy. And they, the Lions Club, the Women's Club, the Rotary, the civic connections. And I feel like we as a society have, those things have gone away, and we're not connected together anymore in these structures. When I grew up, everybody went to a church somewhere, and we didn't have any synagogues. It was very segregated. It was all immigrant white, middle American, but still everybody had their community. There was the Catholics and the Lutherans, and there was four kinds of Lutheran, and the Congregationals, two types of Congregational, but everybody went somewhere on Sunday, even if they weren't, terribly religious. It was just where you belonged. And and you had your people that you interacted with regularly, and they were mixed in all generations. And um, I just feel like people are disconnected today. And I actually was for a certain point in my life, and then we moved here, and for 10 years I was so busy with my little kids. I didn't, I had the school, which was important, but I didn't have a faith community. I didn't know anybody else in town because we were so busy with our own lives. But intentionally, I've had time, and I've connected us to things, and it's been really enriching for us. And it also makes you more resilient, because I tell my kids, life is going to be hard, and bad stuff's going to happen. It happens to all of us. We all die. We all get sick. We all have, different things. And if you have these communities, you have people there for you who can hold you up and, help you get through those things. And it's just, I feel like we're disconnected as a society. We all look at these screens all the time. That's where we get our sense of reality. And it's just not a healthy way to go.
Beth, you nailed it. That's all of it. No, I'm very. To me, it's like that's the real pandemic. Like it's gotten so normal, and if you were struggling 10 years ago, it's even harder now. And you have to fight even harder to maintain an even keel. Like it's scary. It's
Mm.
very scary, and I think we're all, it's like the frog in the boiling water kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a very good analogy.
And you know that's all I want to do. I want people to hear conversations like this and snap out of it and say, you know what, I'm going to get involved. I'm all about community, and I'm the type of person who would host community events and put on different projects, but I need help. I'm just one person. So I'm willing to participate in other people's projects, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes because I, I'm very sensitive in that way. I think most of us feel it, but we're kind of like, well, what are you gonna do? But I'm more like, we have to do something before it gets any more worse. And raising my kids in this kind of reality, it doesn't feel good to me. And like I was saying about being on a screen, it's consuming us. And kids are the real victims. You know how to turn it off, you know how to get involved, but it's harder for kids. Kids are told this is how we connect.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really not good. Not good at all. So yeah, I think that, we all have to keep joining things and strengthening the things that exist. And, there's something that the newest thing I was learning about was they're restoring the Paul Robeson House, right, on Witherspoon Street. So
Right.
I was reading their website and I decided, okay, I'm going to give them a little bit of donation, and I'm like going to watch what they're doing, because that's like a wonderful, positive project, right? That's a new thing in our community. Or the people who are in the Veblen Park, right, restoring the Veblen homestead over in what's it called? The woods over there. Not
Okay. So I think some next steps for us is I want to be more involved in these things, and I'm one of those busy parents. But I want to be involved in things, and my kids are old enough where I can drag them to stuff, and they'll whine and whatever, and I'll make them go, and they'll want to leave early. But I need that community, and I want them to be exposed to that kind of living. So the next steps for me, I would love if you could, continue to highlight these kinds of things and share that with me, and um, I can take some actionable steps.
Yeah, well, I wish you luck in that. You just have to make some time and put some meetings on the calendar and go meet people, because they're out there. I mean,
Yeah.
running for office is really, I love that part of it. Like, I get to meet everybody and I have an excuse to talk to people, and I really do like to talk to people. And that you get a sense of the landscape of the community and who's doing what and who's connected where. And we do have some really wonderful groups and institutions in this community, and you just have to kind of step out of your house and go, show up. You have to show up, and then I think there are people there who will welcome you and offer opportunity to connect. But you just do have to kind of get out of your regular routine and go to things. And um, but there's a lot of opportunity in our town. We're lucky we have a center. We're not living in a kind of a nameless suburb where everybody's just, there's no central town. In fact, there's not that many of them in New Jersey. That's why I think Princeton's so busy on the weekends. People all come here for our town. But so there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, so um, maybe you can put together a small list or something that I can look at or talk about or take some action steps on. I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Happy to do that.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I really want us to continue the dialogue and build action. And my goal, like I said, is to have in person, face to face time more frequently and to strengthen that in Princeton.
Hmm. Well, that's great. I think it's a great goal. And I appreciate that it's an honor to be able to talk with you on this. It's kind of fun to have a nice conversation for a change. And,
Exactly.
and I wish you luck as you move in that direction. I hope that more people follow your lead, and we'll all be the better for it.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And I hope you are able to get us going on the next steps, and we'll continue the conversation.
Great. Thank you, Alexi.
All right. Thank you
Have a
so
great
much,
day.
Beth. Thank you for joining me
All right.
today, and we'll continue to plan.
Great. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.